Yesterday I was talking about the folly of denouncing, quote, Mickey Mouse degrees, and today someone has sent me an article which pretty well encapsulates what a Mickey Mouse degree is. A Mickey Mouse degree, from my point of view, is not so much a degree that has a particular subject, but a degree that is enshrined in the prejudices of its teachers. So let's start plainly. The University of Nottingham's attempt to decolonise Tolkien is not scholarship. It's bandwagoning disguised as criticism. It confuses the language of morality with the discipline of philology, and in doing so commits the cardinal academic sin. It reads the past through the vanity of a very particular aspect of the present. To claim that Tolkien demonised people of colour because orcs and Haradrim exist only is not only simplistic, it's historically illiterate. Tolkien's imagination didn't emerge from the British imperial consciousness of the 19th century, but from the pre-industrial consciousness of Christendom, and it was conscious. It was a conscious decision by Tolkien. His Middle-earth looks backwards to Anglo-Saxon, to Norse, to medieval Christian myth, not forwards, not outwards towards Africa or Asia. He was blind, effectively, to the imperial age. Now that may be a fault, it may be folly, because he was indifferent to it. The scramble for Africa, the Go West movement in America, these were not his intellectual horizons. His models of conflict were not colonial skirmishes in the Sudan, but the Crusades, the Byzantine intrigues, and the Nordic sagas. In short, Tolkien was a medievalist who understood modernity, not an imperialist who justified it. There's a new memoir out of Bishop Callistos, Metropolitan Callistos, and he talks of meeting J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis. To accuse Tolkien of ethnic chauvinism is to replace careful reading with political catechism. Nowhere is this clearer than in the Silmarillion, Tolkien's great political prequel. Its moral architecture is drawn from the fall, not from empire. The elves are not colonizers, they are tragic beings exiled from the light, consumed by pride and undone by their own artistry. Their wars are not about resources or dominion, but about beauty, rebellion and divine order. And the true imperial power in the Silmarillion is Morgoth, the fallen Valar, whose industrial dominion over Beleriand mirrors the despotism of tyrannical empires, Rome, Byzantium, or any machine of total power. It's a reworking of Milton's Paradise Lost. Tolkien's evil is always bureaucratic, mechanical, and absolutist, the theology of domination, not the geography of race. And this is precisely why modern adaptations I think correctly cast actors of colour in the Silmarillion. That is entirely consistent with Tolkien's deeper vision. Middle-earth, with its in its primeval ages, is a vast mythical landscape unmoored from the constraints of European physiognomy. Its peoples are not bound to race, but to light, fall and spirit. To represent elves, Numenorians or Edain with racial diversity is not to distort Tolkien, but to restore his universality. He built a mythic world intended to speak to all humanity, not just to the north of Europe. His own philology reached back to lost languages, not to create a racial purity myth, but to reimagine origins through linguistic beauty. If modern actors of colour embody that world, they affirm Tolkien's belief that myth belongs to everyone. So I want to be perfectly candid. There is nothing less Tolkienian than the racial rigidity of those who resent a black elf or a brown Numenorian. Such resentment belongs to the factory floor of Mordor, not to the halls of Valinor. Yes, Tolkien was blind to empire, but that blindness was not moral approval, it was intellectual inattention. He simply didn't look at the world through the lens of Africa or India. He looked at it through Beowulf and the Vulgate Bible, Gregory Palamas, probably. He was no Kipling preaching the white man's burden, but nor a Conrad staring into the colonial abyss. His was a different blindness, the medieval scholar's inward gaze, uninterested in the cartography of empire. If he saw colour as an issue, it was the green man. He could not have written a line of Kipling's Take Up the White Man's Burden. His world was not about civilizing others, but about surviving moral catastrophe. His heroes, Frodo, Beren, Luthien, conquer not peoples but themselves. So yes, Tolkien was blind to Africa, but blindness is not the same as bigotry. It is an omission, not an ideology. An omission, not a submission, not a colonial control. If we insist on drawing historical parallels, then I think the University of Nottingham should at least draw the correct ones. Tolkien's war resembles the Crusades, with their mingling of faith and folly, their divine ambition and human cruelty. The westernness of Numenor is closer to Byzantium than Britain, a civilization at its zenith collapsing under its own spiritual arrogance. His moral universe is Augustinian, the corruption of the will, the temptation of pride, and the catastrophe of self-deification. When his characters fall, they fall like Byzantines, not like colonial governors, and that distinction matters, and Nottingham syllabuses ignore that fact because Nottingham seems to lack theological literacy. I would love to have a talk with Nottingham's tutors and the people who arranged this absurd course, because it is wrong, fundamentally wrong, and academically illiterate. And the University of Nottingham's Decolonising Tolkien course is a symbol of moral vanity without philological rigour. It replaces linguistic and textual study with slogans about whiteness, ethnic chauvinism and anti-African antipathy, but these categories belong to the 19th century, not the 11th century, and to Tolkien's imagination which dwelt in the 11th century. And this is not critical theory, it is an historical projection masquerading as virtue. As I say, if Tolkien got anywhere beyond the 11th century, it might have been to pick up some of the nuances of Gregory Palamas, but I don't think he would have known of Gregory Palamas specifically. His ideas of transcendence and of the illumination of the light would have been seen in more Catholic terms. It's felt, not specified. It assumes that every depiction of darkness must be racial, every moral hierarchy must be colonial, every myth must be a political manifesto. That isn't scholarship, it's activism in academic costume. If one truly wished to decolonize Tolkien, one would read him properly, one would study his languages, not his skin tones, one would examine his medieval sources, not his moral reception, one would recognize that he universalized mythic experience rather than provincialized it. Real decolonization would see that the Silmarillion already rejects domination. Morgoth's tyranny and Sauron's totalitarianism are anti-imperial allegories, avant la lettre. They are warnings against power, not blueprints for it. In the end, Tolkien's world survives because it transcends such misreadings. It's not about race, but about ruin. It's not about empire, but about moral humility. It's not about who rules the world, but whether the world can be ruled without corruption. Casting actors of colour in the Silmarillion affirms the universality of that vision. It reflects what Tolkien himself called the recovery of clear sight, seeing the familiar anew. It doesn't corrupt this myth, it completes it. It frees it from the provincial prejudices of both the 1950s and of Nottingham's current staff room. And indeed, it's complemented by great works of fantasy like Ursula K. Le Guin's Wizard of Earthsea, whose hero is, again, a wizard of colour, I believe. But we have to be frank. Tolkien doesn't need to be decolonized. The university needs to be deprovincialized. It needs to stop making its ideological obsessions for moral insight and to remember that literature is not a battleground for self-advertisement, but a field for truth. Middle-earth was never England. It was everywhere and everyone. It was a mirror of the human condition. It was illuminated not by empire but by conscience. It was Oxford made universal.